The screen shattered my world in one pixelated glare. His username, ShadowRival87, mocking me from the leaderboard as he snatched first place in the Poetry Slam forum I dominated for months. My fingers froze over the keyboard, heart slamming like it had just sprinted a marathon, because beneath that alias was a face I knew too well. Jordan Hayes, the guy from my lit class who'd been staring at me during lectures like I was the punchline to a joke only he got. And now, as his anonymous post climbed to the top with lines that echoed my own unpublished drafts, I realized our online war wasn't just words anymore. It was personal, and he had no idea I'd been the one bleeding verses against him all along. I slammed my laptop shut in the dim glow of my Brooklyn dorm room, the autumn rain pattering against the window like impatient fingers. New York City thrummed outside, horns blaring, distant sirens wailing. But inside, my chest tightened with a fury that tasted like betrayal. We'd never spoken offline, not really, just those loaded glances across Professor Langley's seminar table, where he'd leaned back in his chair, all easy confidence and sharp green eyes, dissecting Whitman like he owned the soul of America. Me? Alex Rivera, the quiet transfer student from Chicago with a chip on his shoulder the size of Lake Michigan. I'd kept my head down, scribbling notes that doubled as veiled jabs at his too perfect analyses. But online, on Verse Vault, I was Stormweaver 42, fierce, unyielding, the king of the anonymous poetry battles. Until him. That night, I couldn't sleep. The forum's notifications buzzed like angry hornets. ShadowRival87 had replied to my latest entry, a raw piece about fractured identities and hidden longings, with a dissection so surgical it left my words in tatters. Clever facade, he'd typed. But the mask slips. Reveal the fear beneath, or stay forever shadowed. My stomach twisted. How did he know? How did he see through the metaphors I'd armored myself with since coming out to my conservative family last year? Since landing in this sprawling, indifferent city that promised reinvention but delivered isolation instead? I fired back a retort, sharp as shattered glass. Fear is for those who hide in aliases. Step into the light if you dare. Send. And then, nothing. Just the rain, and the gnawing certainty that tomorrow's class would feel like a battlefield. Morning came too soon, coffee bitter on my tongue as I slipped into the back row of the lecture hall at NYU. The room smelled of old books and fresh ambition, fluorescent lights humming overhead like a swarm of doubts. Jordan was already there, front and center, his broad shoulders filling out a faded Red Sox hoodie, Boston boy through and through, with that faint accent that curled around vowels like smoke. He turned as I entered, our eyes locking for a beat too long, and I swear his lips twitched like he was in on some secret. I dropped into my seat, pulling my notebook close, but my pen hovered uselessly. What if he knew? What if those glances weren't casual, but calculated strikes from our digital feud? Professor Langley launched into Emerson's transcendentalism, her voice a steady anchor in the storm of my thoughts, but I barely heard her. Jordan raised his hand, dissecting self-reliance with a passion that made half the class lean in. It's not about isolation, he said, his voice low and resonant. It's about owning your contradictions, loving the parts of yourself society wants you to bury. The words hit like a gut punch. Buried parts. I shifted, my knee brushing the edge of his chair 2 rows up, and heat flooded my face. Ridiculous. He was the enemy, the thief of my spotlight, the guy whose online barbs had me questioning every line I'd written. After class, I bolted for the door, rain-slicked sidewalks calling me to escape. But he was faster, falling into step beside me under the awning of Bob's library. Hey, Alex, right? From Chicago? His smile was disarming, all dimples and genuine curiosity, like butter on hot toast. Up close, he smelled like cedar and rain-damp wool, and my pulse stuttered. Yeah, I managed, shoving hands into my pockets. Jordan, lit theories got you hooked, huh? He laughed, a sound that rumbled warm in the chill air. Guilty. Saw your notes in class. Sharp stuff. Ever post online? Like poetry forums. My blood ran cold. He couldn't know. No way. Sometimes, I lied, forcing a shrug. Keeps the rust off. We walked in sync toward Washington Square Park, the conversation flowing too easy. Books, bands, the soul-crushing grind of midterms. He talked about his roommates' endless parties, I vented about homesickness, and for a moment, the online venom dissolved into something almost friendly. By the archway, where street performers strummed covers of Fleetwood Mac, he paused. This city's a beast, isn't it? Swallows you whole if you're not careful. His eyes searched mine, lingering on the scar above my eyebrow from a childhood skateboarding wipeout. But it beats pretending you're someone you're not. My throat tightened. Pretending. If only he knew how deep that cut. Yeah, I whispered, the rain picking up again. Beats pretending. We exchanged numbers. Study group excuse, he said, and parted with a nod that felt like a promise. Back in my room, I pulled up Verse Vault. Shadow Rival 87 was offline. For the first time, doubt crept in. What if our rivalry was just a veil for something real? The next week blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments. We'd grab coffee at the Bean before class, dissecting Frost over steaming mugs, his knee brushing mine under the table in ways that sent sparks up my spine. Offline Jordan was magnetic, quick wit wrapped in quiet vulnerability, confessing over falafel wraps how his conservative Catholic family back in Boston still whispered prayers for his phase after he came out in high school. They love me, he said one drizzly afternoon in the park, feeding pigeons crusts from his bagel. But it's like walking on eggshells. I hesitated, stirring my tea. Similar. Dad's a cop. Thinks it's a choice I can badge away. We laughed, but it was hollow, laced with the ache of unspoken wounds. Online, though, the glove stayed off. I'd drop a verse about fractured trusts, and he'd counter with one on the terror of unmasking. Each exchange a knife-edge dance that left me breathless. One night, after a brutal critique session in the library, he texted, "Up for a walk? City's alive at 2 a.m. I shouldn't have gone. Midterms loomed, and my latest post was due, but the pull was magnetic. We met under the glow of street lamps on Bleecker Street, the village humming with late-night jazz spilling from basement clubs. He wore that hoodie again, hands stuffed deep, and as we wandered, he bumped my shoulder. You ever feel like you're performing? Like, every conversation's a stage. His voice was soft, edged with something raw. I nodded, heart thudding. All the time, especially with people who get under your skin. He stopped, turning to face me, rain-slick hair curling at his temples. You get under mine, Alex. In the best way. The air thickened, charged like the storm clouds overhead. I wanted to tell him, spill it all, about Storm Weaver, about how his words haunted me, but fear clamped my jaw shut. Instead, I joked, careful, Hayes. I might just write a poem about it. He grinned, but his eyes held questions, and as we parted at my stoop, his hand lingered on my arm. Why does my heart race around you? He murmured, half to himself. I froze, the words echoing my own secret pulse. That confession lodged in my chest like a splinter, festering through the days that followed. Our study sessions stretched into midnight marathons at his off-campus apartment in the East Village, a cramped walk-up stacked with dog-eared paperbacks and vinyl records spinning Springsteen ballads. His roommate, Mia, a fiery theater major with purple-streaked hair and zero filter, was the first to notice. You two are adorable, she teased one evening, tossing popcorn our way as we debated Dickinson's dashes on the sagging couch. Jordan flushed, shooting her a glare, but his foot nudged mine under the coffee table, a silent anchor. I played it cool, but inside, turmoil brewed. Online, Shadow Rival had gone quiet after my last post. A veiled cry about rivals who felt like home, and the absence gnawed at me. Was he pulling back? Or worse, had he suspected? The breaking point came during a campus open mic night at the Kimmel Center, the air thick with nervous energy and the scent of spilled craft beer. I'd signed up on a whim, channeling our unspoken tension into a piece called Veiled Echoes, lines about digital ghosts haunting Real skin. The crowd was a mix, queer kids with rainbow pins, straight allies clapping too loud, the usual NYU melting pot. Jordan sat front row, his applause the loudest when I finished, voice cracking on the final stanza. In the code of us, rivals rewrite the heart's syntax. Backstage, he found me, eyes shining. That was you. Raw Alex. Hit too close. His hand grazed my wrist, thumb tracing a vein, and electricity hummed. Walk me home, I asked, voice barely steady. The streets were alive, Halloween lights twinkling early in shop windows, costumed revelers laughing past. Halfway to his place, Under a canopy of glowing jack-o'-lanterns, he stopped. I need to tell you something. My stomach dropped. This was it, the unmasking. But instead, he pulled out his phone, Verse Vault open. I'm Shadow Rival. The world tilted. He knew. Of course he did. And I challenged, pulse roaring. I dropped the alias because it's you, Alex. Stormweaver. The words, the fire, it's all you. And I can't pretend anymore. Relief crashed over me like a wave, but it tangled with fear, hot and immediate. You knew? This whole time. My voice cracked, betrayal sharpening the edges. He winced, stepping closer, the streetlight casting his face in gold. Not at first. Tracked the style after a few battles, your metaphors, that Chicago grit. But then, the glances, the talks. It wasn't rivalry. It was chasing you. His confession hung between us, vulnerable as exposed wire. I wanted to bolt, to rebuild the walls his words had crumbled, but his eyes, those damn green eyes, held me. Why didn't you say? I whispered. Scared you'd hate me for invading your space. Online felt safe to fight, to flirt. Flirt. The word ignited something, and before I could think, I closed the gap, our breaths mingling in the crisp air. But doubt clawed back. This changes everything. He nodded, solemn. Or nothing. Depends on us. We walked the rest of the way in silence, his pinky hooking mine, a tentative bridge over the chasm. The revelation didn't fix things. It fractured them further, like fault lines under Manhattan's concrete. Mornings after, we'd wake to awkward texts. Coffee? Neutral ground. But the ease was gone, replaced by a hyper-awareness. Every laugh too loaded, every brush of hands electric with subtext. Mia, ever the meddler, cornered me one afternoon in their kitchen, stirring soup with a wooden spoon like a wand. He's a mess, Alex. Hasn't slept right since the mic thinks you'll ghost. I stirred my own mug, guilt twisting. It's not that simple. The lies. It feels like I was played. She snorted, eyes kind but firm. Or tested. Jordan's got walls thicker than Brooklyn brownstone. Grew up with a dad who called his coming out a family crisis. He pushed online because it's where he could be brave without the fallout. Her words landed heavy, mirroring my own scars. Dad's calls home were laced with Bible verses now. Mom's silence louder than sermons. How could I trust when trust felt like surrender? Prejudice crept in sideways, first from the shadows. A classmate, Derek, some bro from the lacrosse team with a man bun and a smirk, overheard our forum talk in the hall. Poetry rivals turning bromance. Cute, he drawled, loud enough for the echo. Jordan stiffened beside me, jaw tight, but I laughed it off, fire in my veins. Later, alone in the bathroom stall, the graffiti blurred through hot tears. Fags ruin everything. Not new. Chicago lockers had their share. But here, with Jordan's vulnerability fresh, it stung deeper. I didn't tell him. Instead, I pulled back, skipping our walks, burying in assignments. Verse Vault went dark for both of us, the silence of void that echoed louder than arguments. The real storm hit at Thanksgiving break. Jordan invited me to Boston. A bold leap, he said, to meet his folks on neutral turf. Show them I'm not alone in this. I agreed, heart pounding, packing a duffel with nervous hands. The train ride north was a blur of foliage turning crimson, his head on my shoulder as he dozed, whispering dreams of a life unapologetic. His family home was a colonial in Cambridge, all clabbered and colonial ghosts, turkey aromas wafting from the kitchen. His mom hugged me stiffly, friend from school, while his dad, a burly accountant with a Red Sox cap, sized me up over cordials. Dinner was a minefield, politics veering into culture wars, his aunt's offhand, those parades are just asking for trouble slicing the air. Jordan's fork clattered. Under the table, his hand found mine, squeezing till knuckles whitened. Alex is like family, he said, voice steady but eyes pleading. I nodded, throat dry, but the weight pressed. Me, the outsider, the proof of his phase. That night, in the guest room with its floral quilt and creaky bed, he slipped in after midnight, moonlight striping the floor. I'm sorry, he breathed, sliding beside me, our bodies aligning like puzzle edges. They're trying, but it's exhausting. I traced his collarbone, the vulnerability cracking me open. I get it. Mine sent a care package, granola bars, and guilt trips. We talked till dawn, unraveling threads. His first crush on a teammate, crushed under locker room taunts. My high school isolation versus my only outlet. Dawn brought fragile peace, but the drive back to Penn Station was tense, his dad's goodbye grunt lingering like frost. Back in the city, the misunderstandings snowballed. A group project paired us with Derek, whose jokes turned barbed. "You two writing love sonnets now?" Jordan snapped back, but I saw the fracture, his confidence eroding, texts growing sparse. One evening, rain lashing my window, I logged into Verse Vault on impulse. A new user, Echo Fracture, had posted, "Rivals to lovers? Or just another mask?" It was him, testing waters, or baiting me. I replied anonymously, heart aching. Masks crack under truth. But what if the truth scares us more? The battle reignited, anonymous fury masking real fear. Offline, he cornered me after class. "Why the distance, Alex?" "After Boston." His voice broke, green eyes stormy. "Because you're pulling away too." I shot back, unfair but true. Hiding behind posts again. Hurt flashed. He stormed off, leaving me in the echoing hall, regret bitter as November chill. Winter descended like a shroud, snow blanketing Washington Square in hush. Our friendship teetered, polite nods in class, aborted texts deleted in drafts. Mia mediated, dragging us to a queer-lit reading at a West Village bookstore, fairy lights twinkling like hesitant stars. The author, a silver-haired poet with a voice like gravel and grace, read of love's lost to silence. Jordan sat rigid beside me, our thighs touching on the velvet bench. Midway, his hand slipped into mine, hidden in the dark, apology without words. I squeezed back, the thaw beginning. After, over mulled wine at a nearby cafe, he leaned in. I was scared. After Derek, after home. Thought you'd see me as weak. I shook my head, thumb stroking his knuckles. Never. You're the bravest storm I've known. The air shifted, charged with possibility, but prejudice lingered like frostbite. The first real conflict erupted at the campus pride panel, a standing room only affair in the student union, rainbow flags draping the walls. Jordan and I volunteered as greeters, handing programs with forced smiles. Derek showed up, ally badge pinned crooked, but his whispers to a cluster of jocks carried. "This is why lit class is ruined." Poets playing house. Laughter rippled, ugly and sharp. Jordan's face drained, but I stepped up, mic in hand during Q&A. Prejudice isn't opinion, it's poison, and it thrives in silence. The room applauded, but backstage, Jordan pulled me into a supply closet, ironic, hearts hammering. "You didn't have to," he murmured, forehead to mine. "Yeah, I did. For us." Our lips brushed, soft, tentative, a spark in the dark. But the door swung open, Mia, wide-eyed. "Holy shit, finally." We laughed, breathless, but the bubble burst when Derek's post went viral on the student forum. Pride pushers ruining NYU. Make lit straight again. Backlash flooded. Hate comments, anonymous threats. Jordan withdrew, skipping class, his texts, "Need space. Sorry." Isolation clawed at me, verses pouring out in frantic notebooks, odes to fractured alliances, elegies for what-ifs. Mia smuggled me into his apartment one snowy night, finding him curled on the couch, eyes red-rimmed. "He's a wreck," she whispered. I knelt, hand on his knee. "Talk to me." The dam broke. Tears for his dad's voicemail. "Don't throw your life away." For the fear that love meant loss. "I pushed you away to protect us," he choked. "But it hurts more." I pulled him close, our sobs mingling, the room a cocoon of shared grief. "We're stronger tangled," I said. Dawn brought resolve. We reported Derek, rallied allies, turned pain to protest. A counter-forum post, co-authored under our real names, went viral, raw, unmasked, a manifesto of resilient love. Spring unfurled tentative, cherry blossoms dusting the park like confetti. Our rivalry evolved. Collaborative posts on Verse Vault. Verses weaving our stories into tapestries of survival. But climax loomed at the end-of-year showcase, a glittering affair in the Great Hall, chandeliers dripping light. Derek lurked in the crowd, his glare a shadow, but we shone. Jordan's solo reading, a tour de force on unburying selves, dedicated with a glance my way. Mine followed, syntax of us, climaxing in lines that bared our online origins. The applause thundered, but as I stepped off stage, he met me center, mic forgotten. "Why does your heart race around me?" he asked, echoing that rainy night, voice carrying. The room held breath. "Because it's home," I replied, and in the hush, he kissed me. Fierce, claiming, under the lights. Cheers erupted, prejudices cracking like thin ice. Yet surprises lingered. Backstage, his phone buzzed. "Dad," unprompted. "Saw your reading online. Proud, son. Bring Alex next time." Tears welled. Redemption's quiet miracle. We walked out into balmy night. Hands linked, the city hours. Misunderstandings mended, friendships fortified. Mia toasting us with cheap champagne. Love, we'd learned, wasn't absence of storm, but dancing through it. And as fireflies danced in the park, our hearts raced in sync. Not rivals, but rhythms entwined. The summer stretched lazy and luminous, a coda to our chaos. Internships dotted our weeks. Me at an indie press in Soho, him tutoring poetry to at-risk kids in Harlem. But evenings were sanctuary. Picnics on the High Line, where the Hudson glittered like spilled mercury, or lazy Sundays in bed, trading dog-eared Neruda. No more masks. Our verses flowed collaborative, published under joint aliases that nodded to our origins, Storm Shadow Collective. The online world buzzed with speculation, but we let it hum, content in the offline truth. One July twilight, as fireworks cracked over the East River for some forgotten holiday, Jordan proposed a road trip. Route 66 echoes, Chicago to Boston, reclaiming roots. We piled into his beat-up Subaru, top down, Springsteen blasting Thunder Road. Detours abounded. A dive bar in Ohio where locals eyed our intertwined fingers but bought us beers anyway. A motel in Pennsylvania with a flickering neon sign and a bed that creaked our laughter into the night. In my childhood neighborhood, we walked past my old high school, ghosts of lockers and taunts fading in his grip. "You survived this," he said, kissing my temple. We both did. Boston brought full circle. His family dinner, awkward but warmer, Dad's handshake firm. "Treat him right, Alex." Mom's pie, laced with tentative questions. We left lighter, the miles blurring into promise. Back in the city, autumn whispered return, syllabi stacking, but our bond a bulwark. Derek faded, graduated amid scandals, his toxicity a cautionary echo. We mentored freshmen at Pride, sharing scars as shields. And in quiet moments, like now, as rain taps our window once more, his head on my chest, I trace the lines of his palm. "Rivals," he murmurs sleepily. I smile into his hair. "Revelers, hearts steady, racing only for each other." The end. No, just the syntax of us, rewriting forever.